It's someone who we share the title Bronco with. We're here with some alumni of our Western Michigan University. They have joined the corporate world in a while, and that's why we are calling this event Western in the Wild. All right, before we jump into the event, I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about us. So our mission is to empower our community with the resources, education, and experience they need to create imaginative technological solutions for the problems the society is facing. With that in mind, we have a few core values that we follow at GDSC WMU. One of them is building a thriving community. We also try to bridge the gap between theory and practice by providing different workshops on different technologies. And we also encourage sustainable progress. All right, we do have some upcoming events. We have a mini hackathon coming up on 22nd November. It's going to be a very short hackathon. It's going to be only 2 hours, no coding requirement. So if you are interested in it, come join us on the 22nd November. We'd love to hear your ideas. If you are interested to be a member of our community, feel free to scan the barcode. We are recruiting regular members, board of mentors. We are also looking for a web developer team, both front-end and back-end. And we're also looking for graphic designers. Feel free to follow us on our socials. We are on all major platforms. We are in Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and on LinkedIn. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and start. Welcome to Western in the Wild. So a few housekeeping rules again. Be respectful to our alumni and to our attendees. And please feel free to use the Q&A tab to ask questions. Full disclaimer, we are going to be recording this to post it on our YouTube. So just to let you know. All right, let's go ahead and start with the introduction of our panelists today. We have Nafees Mahbub, IT data analyst at Ryder. We have Reid. He is a principal consulting engineer at MongoDB. And we have Justin Lee, a software engineer at Ford. So why don't you start with a little introduction? I'm going to start with Nafees.
Hey guys, this is Nafees here. I'm actually a very recent graduate from Western, so I'm very excited to be here today. And I'm a really good friend of Pollock as well. So I'm very honored and privileged to be here as a guest speaker tonight. Yeah, is there anything specific, Pollock, you want me to share about myself or just?
We have some questions to ask you. So yeah, I think that's enough for now, okay. I guess. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead. Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Reid. I'm not a recent graduate of WMU. In fact, I was a graduate of the very first CS class from WMU in 1980. I have worked for the defense industry. I have worked for Sun Microsystems, Oracle, and now have landed up in what's hopefully the last position of my career at MongoDB, which for those of you who don't know is a non-relational document DB company and one of the fastest rising here. I grew up in Southwest Michigan, attended Western, went out to California for 15 years and then moved back. And am very close to where I grew up here to raise a family, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Justin, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, no, once again, thanks for having me. Really glad to be here to be sharing my experiences with the current student. I know back then when I was in Western, I wish I was dreaded to have like a program like this to be able to kind of like get to know more alumni out here in the West. So happy to be in this position to like give back. So I'm currently a software engineer in Ford Research out here in Palo Alto. I'm based out in San Francisco, and I'm actually also a recent graduate, just graduated in 21, so around a year and a half ago. So happy to kind of share my perspective and also maybe the current climate of like the job market and tech and stuff like that out here in San Francisco. It's definitely a little bit crazy. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. That's what we're trying to do here at GDSC WMU to try to give our students a better insights on the corporate life. So your contribution is definitely going to help a lot of students today. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and start our question answer series session. So I'm going to start with, how did you come about your current pathway in your companies? What kind of challenges do you face during this transition? Nafees, do you want to start with this?
Absolutely. So for me, I'm not really a traditional technological expert, I would say, or anything like that. I decided to career in data analytics in my last semester. So like before that, I was, I was actually a supply chain major. I had, by the time I was graduating, I had about 2 years of supply chain experience and all that. But in my last semester, I decided, hey, you know what, I want to pursue a career in IT. So for me, I would say my biggest challenge was that gap, right? Because my peers who were into data analytics, they were studying from high school or even 4 years of college, whereas I'm here just 1 semester left, right? So something that really helped me overcome that gap was I was very fortunate to get an internship as a IT business analyst in my last semester. It was in Elkhart, and one thing I've noticed there's this gap between IT and the people on the floor, right? And it can be like the business management or the people in the warehouse and stuff like that. So in the IT department, I've heard things such as I've been trying to get this system for the last 8 years, but the management wouldn't sign off on this, right? And on the other side, like I heard things such as like IT, like there's this IT guy who came in and did this thing, which kind of made our life a lot more harder. So I saw that there's this gap, in terms of translation of technology and people who are actually using it. And I was fortunate enough that, as a supply chain major and because of my associations, I was able to build really good communication skills. And I used that to kind of break through in this industry, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nafees. This definitely shows a lot of value that people, you were not in the tech for like majority of your semester, and within 1 semester of education, you successfully landed a job at a Fortune 500 company. That speaks a lot of volume. All right, Eric, would you like to add something on that?
Sure. I don't necessarily want to go through my path to my current job from Western because we'd be here for 3 weeks, obviously. But I think there are some insights that I can provide based on where I am in the industry right now. And to echo what the previous speaker was saying here, there are quite a few opportunities out there for those who either don't come from a pure CS IT background or those that are mixing domains. So I think one of the things I would say is for those that don't necessarily arrive to this point and looking for a job once they get their degree by normal means, or not just the pure CS track or the pure IT track, don't discount your abilities to possibly find a good place, a good fit within high tech. What I would say, for example, my daughter graduated Western in 2014, and her major was public relations and advertising and things like that. And Dad went so far as to insist, because she was good at it, at getting a minor in CS, which she did. And she's been able to find several good jobs since she graduated over in the Chicago area, where she may be doing some social media things, some email marketing things, but she always ends up being the nerd in the group because she knows HTML, CSS, Java to a certain extent. I just want to reemphasize that cross-functional, cross-domain skill sets can be extremely valuable, and you should not diminish that in your own eyes. The other thing that I'll mention, and it was just mentioned here, was communication skills, verbal and written. The better your skills, the more opportunities that grows. So that if you have the ability to enhance those in some way or refine them, that's going to serve you well as well when you get started and start looking for this position in high tech.
All right, thank you, Eric. Okay, I think Palak just lag out again.
I am so sorry. I have no idea what's going on with my Wi-Fi today. This never happens. It's like that one important day and everything goes boom. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Eric. I did hear most of it. It's really insightful. Thank you so much for encouraging the students. Justin, would you like to tell us something, some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, and Palak, I think like whenever we have like code demos or presentation for like our code, right? Like on the demo day, there'll be some technical issues and stuff like that. It's kind of like a curse almost. But yeah, I could share a little bit more about my experience kind of doing like CS in WMU, and also kind of how I landed like a job out here in San Francisco, right? So I think first of all, I want to address like the elephant in the room, right? Like that like Western is like it's not a feeder school to any of like the big tech companies, so it's definitely like a little bit harder to get in, right, compared to like maybe some of the peers from like other universities like Berkeley or like Stanford out here. So yeah, I want to address that, but then I think in that sense, like you want to be aware of that and kind of like maybe like work like 1 or 2 inches like harder than like your peers, right? And kind of like showing that differentiator of like you coming from like Western and showing like the projects that you've worked on and stuff like that to kind of like differentiate yourself in that sense. Because I definitely know of people that are able to kind of like land a job out here in like big tech, like the FANG companies and stuff like that, which I suppose most of you dream of getting a job there. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible, right? It's just, I guess, more on like your demonstration or kind of like showing uniqueness in your portfolio to kind of like draw attention from recruiters, right? And attending like conferences and stuff like that would be also a really valid point here. And that's actually how I landed my my research job out here, right? So I'm a research software engineer in Ford, and we basically look at different mobility projects and stuff like that are like 3 to 5 years down the road, and kind of like build out like POCs and MVPs to kind of execute it, right? And basically like mini startups within the company almost. And I actually met one of my hiring manager at a conference in Forbes 30 Under 30, which I was representing like Western in Detroit. And then I met this guy, which was a panelist for like the self-driving panel. And at that time I was involved in the Solar car team, and also one of the Indy 500 like self-driving car competition that we had in Western, right? So I kind of like use that as a pitch to like differentiate myself from the crowd, right? As someone that's eager to learn and eager to like move out west, and kind of like showing that commitment and drive. And I think that's kind of like my door, right? Like the door for me to kind of get out west. And then after landing an internship is more of like how you perform in your internship and getting that return offer, which I think a lot of companies normally do that in a normal like economic climate, I guess, right? Yeah, so I think that's definitely my it's been my goal to kind of like move out to like San Francisco, right? So I kind of had that as my goalpost and try to like kind of work towards that. Yeah. So happy to share a little bit more details too afterwards, but yeah, back to you, Paolo.
Awesome, thank you so much. It's really amazing the way you actually found different ways to differentiate yourself from the other herd. So yeah, it's amazing. So I do see a lot of questions popping up from our attendees. So I'm gonna move back and forth to the questions of the primary questions and the Q&A tab. So Elaine is asking, what were the key factors that motivated you to choose your current job? So let's go ahead with Eric. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. I'll try to make this as applicable to the audience here as possible, but I was laid off from Oracle about 5 years ago. And at the advanced point of my career, I thought, I feel like a fresher. I feel like, am I going to be able to be picked up by anybody in high tech here? And the answer was yes, of course, which reinforces the fact that it reinforces several things. You don't necessarily need to look right at the FANG companies, the Facebook, Apple, Amazon, et cetera, for really amazing, compelling positions, either entry level or otherwise. So that's kind of one for this. But I went by some certain rules in my job search, which I think are applicable across the board here. Number one, don't sell yourself short. Number two, get across where your value is, your experience, your passions are in your CV. Keep your CVs fairly short. I like to see, as I've been a hiring manager before, 1 page if possible. Don't over prettify them. Don't get too cute. We've all seen these CVs out here that are really clever from a visual design standpoint. If you're a visual designer, that's great. If you're going for something in CS, in IT, and high tech, be direct. Generally, hiring managers are looking for, can I see what their value add or the particular uniqueness of this person is in looking at the top of the CV for 10 or 20 seconds. And all of those sorts of things, when you are talking to recruiters, when you are talking to HR people, when you're talking to hiring managers, anything you can do to take a breath, skip a beat, center yourself, to be able to be as natural and relaxed as you possibly can, then the real you shows through. You don't walk out of there going, oh, I wish I'd said this. I was so nervous or something. That only is going to benefit you. And lastly, don't give up. There are a lot of jobs even now. One of the other elephants in the room, the elephant in the room that was mentioned before. What is the high-tech hiring landscape right now? It's actually not bad, even though we see all these things in the news right now about Meta and about Stripe and about Amazon. MongoDB is hiring. That's not an advertisement, but hit me up if you're interested. And lots of other good companies in high tech are hiring right now, which would mean amazing first experiences for those who come out with their BS.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Amazing, great advices for our students. Thank you so much. Justin, would you like to add something on that? I know you were in CS for a very long time, but what was the factor that motivated you to choose this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, totally. And I like to also reciprocate on the last point that Reid made, right? Like, never give up. I think that's really true. And I feel like sometimes, like, being like so distant from tech in Michigan, right? You almost like don't kind of have like that community. But I think like kind of like what you guys are doing right now, having this club that's focused on Google Cloud, it's amazing. Yeah, that's great that you guys are doing this. So having that community, I think, really, really helps a lot in terms of like empowering each other and try like strive for the best. Yeah. But I would say like what motivated me to kind of do my current role is that I think that's two things, right? So the first thing is like that I kind of look for like kind of getting out of like college and after graduating is two things. Like one is like I think what type of work I want to work on. Right. So that's like something that I kind of like try to look for. And then the second thing is like, who would I be working with? Right. I want to be working with like the smartest people in like the domain and also doing like interesting work. Right. And I saw that during my internship, I was able to kind of like survey or like kind of interview back the company, right. Kind of like seeing or survey the environment. And I found out that there's a lot of really, really smart people out here in our lab. So we have around like 250 like researchers and also like software engineers that graduate from like big name universities, right? So I'm basically a small fish in a big pond, and it's definitely sometimes I get like inferior complex and stuff like that. Honestly, to be really honest with you, but you just kind of get over it, and you kind of like realize, right? Everyone's kind of have like a different like starting points, right? And you can't compare with people in like just one dimension, right? So that's part of the reason kind of like working with like really smart people and like working on so the second part was like kind of working on like interesting projects, right? So within for research, we have the flexibility to kind of like work on like different projects. So being able to work on like projects for like 3 to 6 months and then switch to like other projects, right? Kind of like spinning up like small startups here and there, and kind of like testing it out is kind of like what I wanted to aim for, because my eventual goal is to kind of like start out with my own, right? So I think it was really applicable on like my long-term career growth, as opposed to kind of like being domain specific in like a specific company like Fang, right? I mean, in Fangs too, you have, oops.
Are you still there? I think Justin is having some technical difficulties, so we'll roll back to him in a second. I know, Nafees, you have been on supply chain for a very long time, and then you suddenly decided to join the tech. What made you do that?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, right? So for me, I come from a similar background as you, Paulo. Like, we are both from Bangladesh, right? It's a developing country. For me, I'm like, hey, whatever, like, I have this amazing opportunity to study and pursue a career in the US, and I want to make the most out of it, right? So I was on track to do like a PhD and whatnot. Like, that's the like biggest, like highest thing that I could think of at the moment, right? But then, one thing I realized was, for me, like what really mattered to me a lot more is than like, what I'm doing is the lifestyle that I'm getting, right? Supply chain is a great place to be in. Like right now it's booming. There's a lot of need in the supply chain area, right? And we read and know all about it, from Amazon and whatnot, right? Chip shortages and XYZ. But then I realized that the lifestyle that I could get from tech or being a data analyst is a lot more lucrative, right? Now, one thing I'll definitely kind of add on to, I think what Eric mentioned, is not selling yourself short. Because I know Paulo, right? Paulo is a genius at programming, and I'll be honest with you, I really cannot think of a way to catch up to that, right? So if I, think about, like competing against his level of skill set in programming, I really, it would be really hard for me to do that. But something that I'll definitely recommend that really helped me is, a lot of time we get really attracted to a lot of glitters that are out there, right? Like it sounds really cool and I really want to work for Google and whatnot, which is amazing. There's nothing wrong with it. But the question is, I don't believe I can say that I like this or I don't like this without even trying it myself, right? And the best way to do that is by, doing an interview with like someone like Eric, who has been in the industry for, quite some time. And I did this a lot. Like I asked a lot of people in computer science, programming, software development. I said, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And we just hopped on a phone call, sometimes Zoom and whatnot. And I kind of asked them a lot of questions. Hey, how does your day-to-day life look like? What do you like best about your job right now? Here's the thing. There's a lot of content out there to help you with resumes and cover letter. But I feel like if you can get a lot of data points on what kind of industry do you want to be in, what kind of environment do you want to work for, what kind of environment you want to stay away from, what kind of role you want to be in, that will make you a lot more confident when you're applying for jobs and when you're giving an interview. Because when I interviewed for my current position and, my hiring manager asked me, do you know Alteryx? I've never heard of Alteryx, right? But here's the thing. For me, I feel like I'm a lifelong learner, and that's my superpower. And I know I'm going a little over time, but the way I answered that question is, hey, I don't know this right now, but given the opportunity, I'll bring my best foot forward. I'll learn even before my first day, and within a week, I'll get caught up. So I know how to work hard, and I feel like technical skills can always be learned, right? And these are also perishable skills. So if you don't do certain, like I didn't do Python for the last 6 months, I don't remember anything, right? But I can relearn it. But having that, like, not selling yourself short is really important, being confident. So
I've really got to reinforce what he said there in terms of, and we have that opinion at MongoDB when we are hiring folks out, you can train technical material. If you've got the spark, the wanting to learn, lifelong learning, that's really what I was referring to, Nafees, a few minutes ago about spark. That's what I look for when I'm a hiring manager. So I think you couldn't have said it better.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this amazing advice. I think it's definitely one point that Nafees was stretching about is to get to know about the industry that you want to work on by asking a lot of questions to the people around you. I think that can give you a lot of insight and that can really help shape your future better. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move to our next question. I know Nafees kind of, no, not Nafees, Eric kind of touched on this point of some points on resume, but would you like to add something on what are the key points in your resume that help you land your current role? Or like what can a current student that do like different in their resume to land a job?
What was that for me or?
Yeah, you can start.
Sure. I'll just add to what I said before. And I've been looking at some of the other questions here, so I may touch on a couple of those other points. But people worry about, just like they do when they're applying to go to university in the first place. When they come out and they're looking at their first job, if they're not going on for their master's or their PhD, it's like how to crack into this. And the CV, the resume, is kind of the key for this. And folks will worry that I don't have enough substantive stuff on this. I don't have all these internships or research projects or references in the industry or something like that. Again, I'll reiterate this. Don't sell yourself short. You have experience. You may have done a passion project somewhere on the side, or you did something for one of your classes that you took a little bit further. And did you get paid for it? No. Was it an internship? No. Did you publish as a result of it? No. Sometimes listing those things can be the type of thing on a resume that a recruiter or hiring manager will notice and go, oh, that's kind of interesting. That's showing some initiative here. And it's not so much, have you had the requisite 5 unpaid internships so far, after which maybe we'll consider hiring you, which kind of floats around in the FANG world a little bit these days. But again, take a moment, think about it. Oh yeah, I did work on this a little bit, and put it in there. The worst that happens is they ask you about it and you're able to elaborate on those.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's very important that there are a lot of students who, like myself, I always think that I don't have a lot of experience because I didn't work a lot of internships. But I definitely worked on a lot of projects, and putting those on resume, I think definitely can help a lot of students.
Yep.
Do you want to add something on that, Justin?
Yeah, sure, definitely. And I think I got that programmer curse again. I got disconnected a little bit just now for halfway through answering the question.
By the way, that's very common in the industry. Those of us working totally virtually these days, this is standard operating procedure. So don't think you're lucky.
Oh yeah, totally. Only when that's an important demo, though. That says,
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could talk a little bit about the resume. So I think I've done a few resume reviews and stuff like that, and then also kind of getting resume reviews from recruiters out here in the Bay, right? I think something that I see student making mistake on is not elaborating their projects enough, or in details, right? So kind of including what language do you use? So you were okay, I developed a front end application to do, let's say displaying data for the Kalamazoo bus system, for example, right? So what framework do you use for your front end? What framework do you use for your back end, right? What impact did it have? Yeah, so those are things that are really important for recruiters, because they only have generally the industry standard is 7 seconds to look at your resume. So you really want to show the impact that you have done as a software engineer on like a project, right? And also kind of showing like the different skill sets that you have or that is in your toolkit, right? To kind of like show them if there's alignment there, and then they could like kind of move your resume forward, right? So I think that's like a really interesting or like important point for you when you kind of like think about resume, right? And I think Google does a good job on this, where they kind of probably have like resources out there on like how you could craft your resume, right? So kind of like action, verb, and then what do you do with what, and what's the impact, right? That's kind of like generally the format that you want to follow for like the bullet points. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. I'm gonna give this question to Nafees as well. So Nafees was on supply chain for a very long time, and I was in computer science, and yet he helped me with my resume to land my first internship. So do you want to add something, Nafees?
Sure. I feel like, Eric and Justin, they gave a lot of the what's to do and not to do. Something that I'll just like to share, which I kind of always try to follow when it comes to, either doing my own resume or trying to help someone else do theirs, is think about why you're sending out their resume. You're sending out their resume for a specific role or a specific company, right? And the reason they're hiring someone is because they have a need that they need to fill, right? So just, I think Justin mentioned it, recruiters or hiring managers, they only take like 7 seconds to like skim through a resume. So I always, try to think about like, okay, how can I solve their problem so that they can hire me, right? So a lot of people, like if I have 10 different programming languages / projects that I can like show, which is great, which might be impressive. But like, let's say if Eric is trying to hire me and he only needs like 3 things, that 10 things might be a little too overwhelming and he might just like kind of skim through it. So one thing that really helps, I try to always do, I guess, is, okay, what does the job description say and what do they really want? And can I give it to them in the most simplified way possible? Because here's the thing, if I can make my hiring manager's life easier, someone else might have a lot more experiences / projects in place, but they would be more inclined to hire me simply because, hey, this guy's, making my life easier, so why not? I don't know. That's kind of how I try to approach this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nafees. That's an amazing mindset to have when we're applying to a different position. I do have one follow-up question to you, Eric, since you are a hiring manager. A lot of students debate on whether they should design their resume, with beautiful pictures and illustrations. And then some people say it's just like you should have it plain so that it's better for the hiring manager. So what are your thoughts on that?
These days, and I will say that I have been guilty in the past of having a resume that was kind of overly cute. But I guess I didn't suffer because of that. But I will have to say, from what I'm seeing these days and what I'm hearing in the industry, there's a little bit of a backlash that things are seen as overly visually designed or overly pretty or overly cute. And it's in part because of the 7-second thing, right? If somebody looks at it for 7 seconds, what are they going to come away with? Well, they're at least going to come away with, yeah, they have a really pretty resume, but that doesn't do me any good. They may be visually creative. If the job calls for it, fine. But generally, if I'm interviewing for something that's someone who's going to be a consulting engineer, I would much rather see what their database experience was rather than, what fonts that they could use or what color schemes they could use for this. And then the other thing I think I mentioned was earlier, you want to be as concise and get the real bullet points that lay out your value add as early and concisely in the top of the resume as possible, because that's where there's going to be the go, no-go decision made on whether, this person kind of piques my interest, I'll go a little bit further here. That would be my additional recommendations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the Q&A tab. So a question for all of you. If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? So let's start with Eric, because you are on this journey for a very long time.
Yes, I am. I actually, most of the things, again, this is over 40 plus years, I'm amazed to say, I wouldn't change, but there are some things to learn from my journey here. And the first one is, when I was finishing up at Western way back when, I actually had the opportunity to either go directly into the industry, and in 1980, the defense industry was huge and they were actively recruiting, and I went to a conference. It was an ACM conference in Kansas City. A bunch of us drove down from Kalamazoo, went to this huge hiring fair, and I could have my pick of what job I wanted from that. But at the same time, I was also in line to be able to get essentially a free ride to the PhD program at the University of Kansas for CS. I ultimately had to look inside and say, what's going to be best for me? I turned down the doctorate program. I went out and started right out at TRW, but in part that was because they had a fellowship program, and I got to go and get my master's in 2 years at UCLA while still working 3/4 time there. So to me, I think the lesson in all of this is really look inside. What's really important to you? Follow that. Don't do what you're supposed to do. Don't do what you think is going to be necessary to get you from here to there, especially if that's not you. You know, believe in yourself, trust yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What about you, Justin? Differently?
Yeah, no, that's an amazing question. Looking back, right? I mean, I think there's definitely like things that I could do like differently, right? But then I think things happen for a reason, and it kind of leads you to like where you are today, and you kind of like learn from the experiences and stuff like that. But I would say if I were to change, I'd probably like kind of try to gain a little bit more exposure, right, into the tech industry as a student in Western. So what I meant by that is like attending like conferences, like putting yourself out there, like mingling with like people from like other university, like students from other universities, and like hackathon and stuff like that, right? Because I think like a lot of times if you're just mingling with like people in your university, like that's probably all the information that you kind of get, right? And you're kind of like in like a valley almost, right? And you don't really know like where's the top, right? So like you don't even know like where to aim, because you don't even know like what's out there to aim for. So I think like that's definitely like something that I'll do like differently. And I think one example here from my story in Western was that during my time when in like 2020, when I had got an internship out here in San Francisco, we got moved remote, right? So I actually got a place in Hawaii with 2 other like software engineers. So we stayed out in Hawaii for like my entire internship because we got moved remote. I was like, it's either like California or Hawaii, right? So it was like a no-brainer. And then I stayed with like 2 other software engineers that was actually from like different like coast to coast of the country, right? Like one of them were from like University of Florida, and then one of them were in like a university in SoCal. So from there, I really like kind of like learned a lot, and we lived together in a house for like 3 months, right? So I really learned a lot about like different resources and stuff like that school provides that like maybe Western doesn't, right? And getting that exposure to that kind of like allows you to kind of like get a better like I guess like mindset, or like in terms of like where the peak is, so that then you can make a better aim. I would say exposure is actually something really important, and it's still something that I try to like strive for, right? Even though I'm out here kind of like going to like startup events and stuff like that, getting to know like different like VCs and stuff like that, and getting to know like different like opportunities out here, right, in that domain. Yeah, so I think that's something that I'll definitely like do different or do more of, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. We don't have a whole lot of time. We're going to try to keep it within 6 p.m. EDT. So we have one question from Michaela. During a period of layoffs from all these tech companies, how does one navigate the job market when there are many laid-off experienced developers looking at the same position as well? Nafees, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. To be honest, this is unfortunately a very uncertain times. But like for me at least, I really like to look at the economy as a whole, or like, you know, how businesses kind of make decisions and whatnot, right? And which is, so yes, you know, if you think about it, right, there are these big companies, right, like Tesla and, you know, all these other companies who are like laying off thousands of people every day. But then I feel like there is also a lot of different industries / companies who are still hiring, kind of like what Eric said, like MongoDB is still hiring, right? But then again, we are like very attracted to those, you know, glitters sometime. And that's why we kind of like forget to look at other things. So I'll give you a really good example when it comes to, you know, I was working at this company in Elkhart. That was just before I was graduating, and they're still hiring for, you know, IT people and whatnot, right? Software developers and whatnot. So there are still opportunities that are out there. Now, when it comes to you versus this all the experienced people that are in place. Now, I'd like to say this, right? You know, people hire people. What I mean by that is there might be 1,000 people applying for this one job, but I'm sure whoever is hiring, they probably have this ATS system, which again does the first filtering. But then whoever is hiring, they're not going to look through the 1,000 job applications. They're going to look at, I don't know, top 10, top 20. I don't know. Eric might know that better, right?
It really depends, but generally you're right. Yeah.
Exactly. Top 10, top 20. So the question again is, okay, at that point it becomes more like, can you make an impression out there, right? Can you solve their problem? If you get an interview, you know, can you figure out how to build a rapport with the, you know, interviewer, right? So you're not really competing against 1,000 people, which might look that way. You're actually competing against 10 people or 20 applicants who are actually getting the opportunity to interview for this position. I'll say that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nafees. Eric, do you want to add something on that?
I would just say I think those are really good points, and there really are. It's not like the bottom is dropping out of the industry as I had seen in 2000, 2008, were both times where it was a whole lot worse than this right now. We just see the really visible ones and all of the Elon adjacent drama that's going on here. But the reality is there are tons of companies that are hiring for really interesting things right now. And I think to take what was just said a little bit further, you want to grab attention. Then, you know, if you can make the cut that they're going through all these resumes, and I'm making the action like I'm actually doing a physical resume, which nobody does anymore, but to be able to at least get in the mix and say, I think this person might be worth, you know, at least talking to, at least talk to the recruiter. Then you're in a position to be able to make a personal connection, human to human, to be able to say why you're so interested in this and why your experience can be brought to bear here. And then you've got a foot in the door and you have a really good chance that, you know, assuming there's a fit, to be able to make your case and get a really good shot at that. So in with all this today, networking is even more important than usual. And I'll just say something I wanted to say earlier, and that can even include reaching out to someone. And yes, if anybody wants to reach out to me just to talk about things or to get a perspective on something, I assume my email address is in there somewhere, and you can reach out to me after this. Those types of connections and relationships can make a big difference. And then lastly, follow not some of the big wigs in the industry now who are known names. You know, don't follow Linus or somebody like that. But I follow a number of people in the industry who are not super well known, but are just super insightful and super smart. And that really can make a difference too, and you never know how it'll make a difference in this process.
Eric. Justin, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, sure. I was actually affected by this entire layoff and stuff like that, where like half of my organization was cut, right? And I had to kind of reorg to fortunately I still had a job and kind of had to reorg to like a different organization within the company, right? So there's definitely a lot of uncertainty in this period. But I think like as new grad, and I think Eric and Nafees kind of like put it spot on, right? Like there's just so much like news coverage about like big tech, like kind of like firing people and stuff like that. But like they are not entirely tech, right? Like there's still a lot of different companies out there. They are like hiring for tech and stuff like that, and like smaller companies and stuff like that too. They are still like hiring really rigorously. So I would definitely recommend to kind of explore in those positions too, right? At the moment to kind of weather the storm. And if big tech is eventually like your goal, like there's still a possibility out there in like 2023 or 2024, right? Yeah. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of your input. That was amazing. I do see one question that is directed to Justin. And I think you can all add something because I personally have this question. I'm pretty sure a lot of students have this question. It's from Taryn. She's saying that I dream of becoming a software engineer. So I have a question for Justin Lee. How much do you actually apply in your job from what you learned from your degree at Western?
Okay. Is there? Well, let me check the attendee list real quick. Is there a professor here that I took classes from? Yeah, I would say no. That's a really good question, right? And I mean, Western. I think how Western teaches computer science is sometimes like a little bit like theoretical, right? So there's definitely some projects out there, but then there's like not a lot that's like directly applicable and like using technologies that is directly applicable for like our day-to-day job. That being said, I think some of the things that you learn like fundamentally definitely helped you to think, right? Like first principle wise as a developer, and being able to like think analytically on like problems or like solutions for problems in like software would definitely kind of help. So in that regards, it does help a little bit. But honestly, like the whole tech industry, I don't really agree with like the whole like recruiting process for like tech, right? Like kind of like grinding lead code and stuff like that. But it is what it is, right? Like for you to kind of get a job in like big tech, like you kind of have to do lead code. And then during your orientation or your first week at work, you're like, wait, so I like did all this to like write front end applications? Like
that is so common right now. And I hope people are getting away from leak code as everything. I hope. Sorry, didn't mean to step on you.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree on that too. And I think startups are doing a good job on like, like having you build out like projects or portfolio, right? That it's like directly applicable to like day-to-day work. But yeah, I think like fundamentally you definitely learn things that are beneficial for your career. But then in terms of like projects, I would say like seek out for when you have an opportunity to do projects at like class and stuff like that, seek out for like kind of like out there technologies, right? To kind of like use them at class so that you could kind of like stay relatable, right? And kind of like polish it up on your resume too, kind of showcasing it when you're applying for jobs. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Eric and Nafees, do you want to add a little bit on that?
I'll just add a little bit more here. When I came out, I dual majored in CS and pure math. And how much have I used the pure math? Well, about what you would expect, but I don't regret doing that at all. Obviously, if you apply for a job and you have a fine arts background and you're applying for a job where it really needs a lot of back-end developer stuff, that's not going to be a mesh. But I have in the past hired people that don't necessarily check off all the boxes necessarily, but they have curiosity, spark, desire to learn quickly and pivot, flexibility, and those I like to see being counted for as much as whether or not, oh, are you really an expert these days in Golang or Rust or, heaven forbid, even the old Java? Because, again, those things can be taught. That's just what I'll add to this.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. Nafees, do you want to add something before we finish up the session?
I think they covered pretty much everything. If I have to add something, I'll just say this, right? You can learn different languages and softwares on, in a lot of different ways, right? There's a lot of resources that are out there, but I feel like college, gives us a platform to learn how to actually learn, right? But unfortunately, a lot of people, they just use this just to kind of get by finishing the exams and whatnot, and it becomes more like a chore rather than actually, okay, did I learn something from it, right? So for me, absolutely, I apply to maybe like the SQL part that I learned from my classes, and my work has a lot of Power BI, Alteryx, database management and whatnot, which I had to kind of self-taught. But then I learned a lot about how to learn from my 4 year of college, taking 15 credit classes, right? So that's all I had.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up with that question. So yeah, thank you so much again, alumni. It was really, we are really honored to have you. I know, we all know that you have a very hectic schedule with everything. So thank you so much for being here, despite of that. So yeah, everybody, thank you very much for joining this session. We're going to go ahead and end it. Thank you again. You have a good day.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Have a great one, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.